Hello, everyone, and welcome to day three of the Virtual Island Summit. My name is Jerome DeParini, and I am the Assistant Tech and Design at Island Innovation. I am based in the vibrant archipelago of over 7,000 islands in the Philippines. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly mention Island Innovation, which many of you already know. Island Innovation is a sustainable consultancy primarily focusing on islands. Our services include island development strategies, impact program design and coordination, capacity building, strategy communication, government affairs, and events like we are hosting today. We are trusted by clients around the globe, and if you're interested learning more about our work, please reach out to us using the contact information available in the chat. I am very happy to be presenting this session titled Green Initiative in an Island Biosphere, Fireside Chat with the Isle of Man Chief Minister Alfred Cannan. Before we begin, you should see a poll right now on your screen. We have only 3 questions, easy to answer. Let us know your gender, where you are connecting from, which sector and industry you belong to. This will give us a chance to get to know each other and before we dive into the session. So this session will delve into the innovative green initiatives that are shaping the Isle of Man's future, from renewable energy projects to conservation efforts that protect its unique ecosystem. Chief Minister Cannan will also share insights into how the island is balancing economic growth and with environment stewardship, ensuring a sustainable future. I invite you to please make sure to use the chat function to introduce yourself, where you are joining from, and make any comments during the session. Please make sure that you are using the Q&A function for any questions you might have about the session, and we'll do our best to make sure that we can address as many as possible. All right, so I see a lot of people participating from Scotland, from Fiji Islands, Manchester in the UK. Hello, everyone. From Germany, from Jamaica. Hello. From Jamaica, Mauritius, from Canary Islands. Hello, everyone. A lot of people joining us from the globe, and I'm glad for that. All right, so we have the poll results here. As you can see on your screen right now, we have, let's say, more or less even split between male, female, and other gender in this session. We have people connecting from the Europe, 75%, followed by North America, Caribbean, Africa, Indian Ocean, and in the Pacific. Thank you for joining us. And the sector we have here, most of you from the academia, NGO, government, private sector. And for the industry, we have also from the finance, followed by energy, environmental services, agricultural, forestry and fisheries, politics and governments. And thank you so much for joining us. It's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for this session, our CEO, James Elsmore. James, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Jerome, for that great introduction, and great to see everyone joining here from around the world. It's my pleasure to invite our speaker to join me on camera, the Isle of Man Chief Minister Alfred Cannan, member of the House of Keys. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion about the many things happening in the Isle of Man when it comes to sustainability and biodiversity, and specifically the vision for the island's commitment to sustainability as a UNESCO Biosphere. So Chief Minister, thank you so much for joining us at the Virtual Island Summit. We're very happy to have the Isle of Man here represented, and would like to invite you to say some opening words and introduce the audience who may be less familiar with your island to know some more.
Well, thank you very much indeed, James. Good morning to everybody, and in our native tongue, Manx Moramai. Actually, just as an aside, I think it's highly appropriate to be talking to you this morning. It's the 11th of September here in the Isle of Man. We've only just finished summer, and I drove to work this morning over our mountaintop, or what we call our mountaintop, in a hailstorm with the outside temperature at 3.5 degrees centigrade. And after 2 days, when our connectivity, which is our main supply chain, which is through our ferry service, has struggled to keep going, and it's only the 11th of September, and we're facing a good 4 or 5 months of autumn and winter yet to come. So I do think it's highly appropriate that everybody is meeting at these types of summits. And of course, we know all the islands across the world are facing their own challenges as the environment changes around us in so many different ways. So thank you very much for the invitation to come along. I thought I might just tell you a little bit quickly about the Isle of Man, so I can put it into some sort of context for you. And I think you're going to bring up a map in a minute or two. But we are based between the northwest of England and Ireland, I think is probably the best description. We have a population of around 85,000 people, a resident population of about 85,000 people. We are self-governing as a nation and self-funding with our own parliament, our own democracy, and our own judicial and legal systems. But we have a strong relationship with the British Crown, and that means that the UK is responsible for our defence and international relations, and we share a very similar constitutional relationship with Jersey and Guernsey, and together the three islands are known as the Crown Dependencies, which differentiates ourselves from other related islands around the globe, British related islands, which are generally termed the Overseas Territories. We're in customs union with the United Kingdom and also part of the Common Travel Area within the United Kingdom, which means there are no borders in respect of goods and people in movement within the Common Travel Area. Having said that, although we've got all these very close ties, we still manage to maintain, I think, a unique and distinct identity. We have a very unique natural environment, a unique history and culture, which has been built up over 1,000 years plus. A very secure island. I think we're rated the second most secure place in Europe, actually, behind Monaco, which we're obviously hoping to maintain. And we generally have well-stocked, fertile farmland and water reserves. We also have a very good, solid economy, which has been based around financial services as the predominant industry, but has diversified over recent years, and really focused on biotech and also an emerging food and drink sector and manufacturing. This obviously differentiates quite a lot from what was our traditional industries back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, which was very heavily reliant on tourism, although clearly that has changed with the emergence of cheap travel, particularly to Europe. We're also, I think, democratically pretty stable. We're very much a sort of independent parliament. We don't have political parties in any sort of dominant position over here. Most people stand as independents, and from those independents, they elect a chief minister, of which I'm obviously privileged and proud to hold the position, which I've done so since October 2021. I put together a cabinet. The cabinet produces a plan for government, and then we push ahead and enact that. Although we are a small nation, we take our responsibilities for government very, very seriously, and hence why, as I'm just about to talk about, we've made a lot of strong commitments around securing our environment and playing our role in meeting some of the global challenges that are facing us from climate change and environmental perspective at the moment. So it was a very proud day for us in 2016 when we were admitted to UNESCO's World Network of Biosphere Reserves. So we're a whole island biosphere reserve, and we have an assessment coming up fairly soon, and we are, I hope, determined to retain that status. And it, of course, recognizes not just about the environment, it's about our culture, our heritage, and our economy, and the Manx people's desire, I think, to cherish and nurture both the foundations of that, but to build that into the future as well. We have 26 official dark skies sites now for stargazing, the highest stargazing concentration of dark sky sites in the British Isles. Into our just under 600 square kilometers, we pack 18 national glens, 32 beaches across 95 miles of coastline. And we also manage 12 nautical miles of surrounding Manx-owned waters. And of course, that amounts to 2.5 times more water and sea base than there is actually land. And within those waters, we've now created 10 marine nature reserves. And I think the biosphere status really has confirmed the island's desire and indeed actions and commitments to a sustainable future. And we're continuing to leverage that status with a range of measures to increase carbon capture opportunities, protect ecosystems, including peat, land restorations, for example, woodland and tree planting, and also exploring our desires to see the seas maximized for offshore wind. One of the key projects we've been pursuing is blue carbon capture and carbon sequestration initiatives, and of course sensitive land management initiatives, which we regard as very important. And we're having to do that clearly in collaboration with local agriculture and the fishing industries. And we continually engage with organizations such as our National Farmers Union. We've rolled out agri-environment schemes, and we do that in conjunction with the Farmers Union, sustainable fisheries management and promotion, clearly, of local buy messages. And I think our biosphere status also instills very much a sense of pride in the local community as well, actually, and helps them grasp, I think, the need to play a role in maintaining our environment, even if that's just an acknowledgement, although we would prefer them to play an active participation role. And indeed, businesses themselves can now be accredited as biosphere groups, or indeed individuals can volunteer and recommend projects, which I think enables the community to be more conscious of it, and of course creative when it comes to participating or recommending initiatives. And obviously, I think, again, governments by themselves can't just enable this. So we pay a lot of attention to significant groups such as the Manx Wildlife Trust, who we place a lot of emphasis on in terms of their views when it comes to managing the environment and ecosystems within our community. So, I think this UNESCO status has really acted as a very, very strong lever for us. And I think actually making sure that the government is working with, collaborating with, and encouraging that community participation is hugely important to everybody moving forward in an understanding way. I just want to briefly mention sustainable finance. I think I talked to you very briefly about strong economy, financial services. I think now the estimated funding need for climate action and UN sustainable development is merely just 1% of global financial assets. That's 4 trillion out of a global financial assets of 470 trillion. And of course, we can play a role in that. So, that's another now clearly identified area. We're probably slightly behind the curve in terms of moving forward in this area. But, we recognize actually that there is a clear target within that in terms of the investment needed to promote the sustainability. And that's both sustainability on the island, but also we recognize actually we can help do that potentially, also impacting and influencing actions around the United Kingdom, British Isles, and perhaps further afield, because our finance industry is very much an international one. So that's now under development in a more focused way. Climate change obviously is a critical element of the overall picture, and we have got climate change targets embedded into our legislation. We very much are targeting the full decarbonisation of our electricity system and supply by 2030, and we're doing that in a number of ways, but also alongside that, the opportunities for renewables are key. The government's tried to drive that by also setting targets for delivery of renewable energy, both on land and offshore as well. Both actually, as we know, can be tricky to achieve, particularly when you're looking at a small island. Planning, siting, community reaction to turbines in these cases do need a lot of active engagement, and clearly have also got to abide by legislation and quite a lot of bureaucracy, as you might expect, around our planning legislation. Offshore is actually arguably simpler, but the scale of the project is far larger, and you have to balance that in with the clear development of also offshore energy in areas around us, also with the need to protect some of our fishing grounds and look after the environment under the water as well. But we're progressing on both those projects, and they will sit alongside our plans to decarbonize our electricity network. And of course, we are slightly perhaps luckier than some islands in that we do have interconnectors that run between ourselves and the United Kingdom, so that we can also get, if providing they of course meet their targets, we can actually utilize some of that energy generation on both our shores to contribute to ensuring that we do decarbonize successfully. And I think really, I hope that gives a brief overview of our island, what we are doing in terms of the complete sustainability agenda. Obviously, climate change, decarbonisation plays a key role in that, but this sort of sustainability view for the future really encompasses so much more, as I know many people will recognise, and that includes adapting our island, for future weather conditions, looking at our transport links, making sure our decarbonisation plans are in place. And tricky, difficult, but it's important that we all play a role. And thank you very much for inviting me to say a few remarks, James.
Thank you very much. That was a very helpful overview, and there's obviously a lot happening. I can see in our audience that the Biosphere Reserve representatives are well represented here, which is good. And clearly that's a huge win for the island to have that recognition. But it's great to hear that the sustainable development angles go beyond that. And I was curious, so as you mentioned, the Isle of Man as a crown territory has a very specific relationship with the UK. So in what ways does the Isle of Man collaborate with international partners or organizations when it comes to advancing sustainability and environmental goals, especially when it comes to taking part in international agreements, for example?
Yeah, in terms of the sort of sustainability agenda, we asked the UK government for the Paris Agreement to be extended to the island. So in fact, we could demonstrate our commitments to international targets. It doesn't mean that we have to hit their targets exactly, but we do need to show ongoing commitment. So there's biennial reporting, which we are doing to the UK. And then obviously with content from the rest of the UK nations to the UNFCCC. And in order to have that ratification extended, the island needed to prove that it was taking suitable steps and setting appropriate targets. And this was done by providing a list of our relevant legislation that we had put in place, such as the Climate Change Act, and policy documents associated with that. For sustainable finance, for example, we are actually partnering with the International Sustainable Finance Centre of Excellence in Dublin to help deliver our sustainable finance roadmap. And I know that they also did a lot of work with the Irish government in terms of their plans in this area. And they will come and make an assessment in due course of our sustainable finance proposition on the island. So I think that's just two examples where we will be liaising or demonstrating our commitments to international targets, but also liaising with the appropriate bodies to be able to authenticate that.
Very interesting, and that's really the spirit of this event, is around bringing together examples from different islands that often have similar challenges, similar opportunities. I just came back from the Faroe Islands, and it's interesting everything that you say, because the Faroe Islands in some ways has a similar constitutional relationship with Denmark to the Isle of Man in the UK, which provides some similar opportunities, similar challenges, especially around the finance angle. And I was curious, so we talked a lot about what the government is doing. How do you engage with the private sector on the island and get them on board with this movement towards sustainability? Does the government need to encourage them or bring them along on that journey?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're lucky in some respects that we do have quite a significant international business representation. So, for example, most of the major banks are represented in some form. Most of the UK major banks are represented in some form. We have quite a big life assurance industry, and many of these boards and businesses have adopted their sustainability targets, and in many ways want to see progress irrespective of what government is doing. So we've worked alongside them, but also to be fair to our parliament, from a political perspective, climate change has been on the agenda for some considerable time. We adopted pretty ambitious targets under the last government, set those into legislation in our own Climate Change Act, and now continue to work together as much as possible to understand how we can deliver and meet, particularly the core, which is sustainable renewable energy goals, but also delivery. And of course, we've got to balance that out. We all live in a 24-hour society today. Many of our businesses, as I said, are international. They need absolute constant electricity demand. So both demonstrating that through our own ambitions, our island plan, our own legislation, but also working with them and encouraging them. So we do give financial support to businesses to assist them with transitioning in a more sustainable way. And that is also done not only just through to the business community, but also out into our local community. So they're green initiatives, green schemes, which will help support people. So these are financial schemes. They're often means tested, but they will help people retrofit housing, for example, I suppose is the best deal, to improve the stock of the housing, to reduce CO2 emissions from housing stock, and also hopefully to allow them warmer houses into the future, so that actually some of their needs will reduce as well. So very much working with the business community and offering, where appropriate, those incentives to allow them to push forward in terms of either retrofitting office space or investing into their own electricity generation.
Are there some challenges there when it comes to balancing the need for economic growth for the Isle of Man with pushing sustainability from these different angles?
No, I think actually, I mean, my view is, and I think many people I work with, is actually this whole drive is actually brings economic benefit.
Right.
And whether that is local economic benefit in terms of the investment needed to drive down carbon emissions, reduce electricity consumption, find renewable opportunities, and clearly, the opportunities for the private sector to play a strong role in that are definitely there. The fact that actually, if we can demonstrate that we are capable of meeting our targets, that we can deliver this sustainable energy, that we can create the environment, then actually, both business will want to relocate to the island and stay, most importantly, stay on the island. But we hope that, obviously, like everybody else, we want economic growth. And clearly, if you create the right environment, then also, business and people are going to want to come to the island. And we have to balance this out against some of the greater challenges that again a lot of people will be facing around an aging population, and that demographic challenge, which putting more weight and emphasis into delivery, for example, in our case of healthcare and rising costs in other areas, and the weight then that's been put on the generation coming through to effectively pay for that. So we need to continue to attract young people to our island. We need to continue to attract businesses, but of course they're also only going to come if they believe, as an island, we're committed to the environment, and to delivering for them the kind of commitments that they believe any responsible society should be doing. So I think this is the whole, you get into a position here, James, where actually, you have quite significant, you can get quite radical impacts on islands, if these things aren't addressed. I mean, the challenge clearly comes, paying for a lot of this is sometimes challenging. We're quite lucky in many respects, but even for us, with what you might term a relatively healthy economy, meeting all these commitments, the infrastructure costs around this, putting in place all the legislation, everything that's associated with that can prove incredibly challenging for people. And of course, an island like ourselves, we have to be competitive, hugely competitive in the world. So yes, we've got to make all these advancements. We absolutely recognize that it's challenging, but it's also, when you go back to your original question, actually will help us develop a better economy into the future. So actually, I see this as win-win progress for everybody, creating greater sustainability, but at the same time, actually, you are building and developing your economy, albeit you're just refocusing it in different ways.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time. Someone has messaged and asked about if there's any collaboration between the Isle of Man and the overseas territories. I'm not sure if that's something you can comment on, but I'll just mention that the overseas territories of the UK are very well represented in this forum overall. So there's many people joining from those, and there are obviously some parallels there. So if you have any comments on that, it would be great. But also, just to wrap up, it would also be good to hear what your hopes and aspirations are for the Isle of Man when it comes to sustainable development over the next few years.
So first of all, we do a lot of collaboration with the Crown dependencies. I mean, I think we have fairly similar challenges and also ambitions that we want to overcome. I mean, it's always great to see our friends in the overseas territories. I often meet overseas territories in London at various events centered around Westminster. But of course, I mean, I think everybody has different challenges, although we all sort of want the same solutions. But we do our very, very best to understand what everybody else is doing. But our collaboration really is, I suppose, those other two islands, Jersey and Guernsey. And James, sorry, your second part there was just to say quickly about
just to wrap up. If you have any other thoughts on the aspirations for the future and things that you'd like to see when it comes to sustainability on the island.
Well, I mean, I hope I've gone some way to sort of making the case for, the islands across the world, wherever they may be, having a proper voice in this whole issue and getting, where necessary, the right support. Because, as I've said, I mean, impacts on islands of everything from economic downturns to failure to adapt or to be able to keep pace with the need, for example, to change our reliance on fossil fuels, can be very significant. So it's very important that this type of forum continues to take place, and absolutely, that we try and pick up and learn from each other where there have been successes and progress. But I would perhaps say that, just from an island perspective, I think actually we're very lucky. We've got good commitment from both in business, industry, and the community and government around making progress. Secondly, having a whole island approach to this, which we've been very lucky to achieve with our island biosphere UNESCO award, has enabled us to leverage and move forward, I think, as a collective. And yeah, I mean, there are many hurdles in front of us. This is not easy by any means, but we have to keep going. And if things don't work out, then we've got to quickly find the solutions to overcome that in order to keep pushing forward. But I hope we will get there. We will get there in the end. Great.
Absolutely. No, it's a great journey to be on. Never an easy road to take, but it's very interesting to hear the parallels between the Isle of Man and the many other different islands we've had represented this week during the summit. So thank you so much, Chief Minister, for taking the time this morning to join us, to share some more information about the initiatives that have been happening there. I know that we also have your Minister of Agriculture joining this week for one of our other sessions. And so we're very happy that the Isle of Man is well represented this week at the Virtual Island Summit. So thanks again for joining. Just for our audience, before we end the session, for everyone, in case you have missed it, big news this week that we have partnered with the government of St. Kitts and Nevis to announce the Global Sustainable Island Summit taking place in May next year. After the amazing experience in Prince Edward Island, Canada this year, we'd like to invite you all to join us in the Caribbean at the end of May 27th to 29th. And there is a special discount available for all Virtual Island Summit attendees. So we do hope that you will be able to continue that conversation in person next year. Keep an eye out for more information in the chat and in the emails. And our next session coming up today at 9 a.m. New York, 2 p.m. London, or 11 p.m. Sydney is the Road to COP29, the Island Priorities for Baku. And that will be a very interesting session, bringing together small island developing states and subnational island jurisdictions, looking at island priorities for the UNFCCC Climate Change COP later this year in November. So I hope to see some of you there for that session. Once again, thank you very much, Chief Minister, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.